Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MTGO Traders. My name is Taryn, and this is the Core Set 2019 set review for gold, artifacts, and lands. So we are officially at the finish line for the set. Going to round out the last couple of cards here and just talk about the gold stuff here that you probably will never see in Draft and Sealed, and might see some play in Standard and, Commander and Brawl, stuff like that. But, all of the gold cards are usually either rare or they are uncommon. So a card that you may not see as often, but do fit really nicely in certain draft shells. Things like Aerial Engineer here, a 4-mana 2/4. As long as you control an artifact, Aerial Engineer gets +2/+0 and has flying, turning it into a 4/4 flyer for 4. That's not bad at all. So if you are in that archetype of white-blue artifacts, this card is a powerhouse and can definitely get over a lot of opponents' creatures. But again, because it's an uncommon, and it's one of those things where it's very synergistic with the particular draft pool, which is white-blue, you may not get into it that often, but if you do, it's definitely rewarding you and giving you a giant powerhouse in the air. Moving up here, we have Arcades the Strategist, a 4-mana 3/5 legendary creature, Elder Dragon. We're going into the Elder Dragons here. Flying Vigilance. Whenever a creature with Defender enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card, and each creature you control with Defender assigns combat damage to equal to its toughness rather than its power, and can attack as though it didn't have Defender. Super interesting card, basically like an Assault Formations deck for Modern. This is a card that might see some Modern play in that particular list. Really love the colors here for this guy as well. Just like the updated art as well on this card too. I think this will see probably a ton of play in Commander, Brawl, and maybe even some Standard stuff, even though it is kind of a weirdly specific mana, the 3 different types of color mana here. It might see some play because it can do some interesting things in that format as well. As far as being Draft and Sealed, it's a Mythic. If you get into it and you're in these colors, amazing, go for it. But yeah, it's a Mythic and it's 3 different colors. You probably won't play it at all in Draft and Sealed. Moving on here, Brawl Bash Ogre, a 4-mana 3/3 Ogre Warrior with Menace. That's already pretty good by itself. But whenever Brawl Bash Ogre attacks, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, Brawl Bash Ogre gets +2/+2 until end of turn, making it a 5/5 with Menace. That is a huge deal. Really like this card a lot as far as getting in with those kind of sacrifice strategies with the red-black Rakdos strategy in Draft and Sealed. As far as seeing play outside of Draft and Sealed, it's not going to at all. It's a little inconsistent in that particular format, or standard format, a little too slow. Maybe you see some like Commander or like Brawl play in a weird red-black deck. I'm not really sure about that, but as far as Draft and Sealed goes, it's just okay. Next up here we have Chromium the Mutable. This is a 7-mana 7/7 legendary creature Elder Dragon with Flash. This spell can't be countered with Flying, and discard a card until end of turn. Chromium the Mutable becomes a human with base power and toughness 1/1, loses all abilities and gains hexproof. It can't be blocked this turn. Super interesting card. This is basically giving the Esper control list in Standard a huge threat in the air that can't be countered, and it can also like adopt hexproof, which is super crazy as well. Meaning the only way to basically kill this is with like a board-wide either wipe spell or a board-wide like damage dealing spell like a Sweltering Suns or just a Goblin Chain Whirler, something like that. Chromium is super powerful. You're going to see this probably in Standard a lot in sideboards for sure. Draft and Sealed, this card's again a Mythic, so you're probably not going to see it a lot, but if you do get into it, congratulations to you. This guy is a truck and amazing. But yeah, Commander is probably the place this card is going to see the most play for sure. My only kind of gripe with this card is that if you look at the original art of Chromium, it's like this like cool metal looking dragon, and then you look at the art on this and it's kind of interesting as well, but like the face. What happened? Like a starfish face. What happened to the face here? I'm so confused. Either way, it's fine, it's fine. We'll move on here. We have Draconic Disciple. This is a 3-mana 2/2 Human Shaman. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, which is nice. You can actually pay 7 and then sacrifice it, create a 5/5 dragon creature token with flying. So interesting ability here to be able to ramp in the early game and then in the mid to late game become a 5/5 dragon with flying. That's super powerful as well. If you're in the red and green colors from Draft and Sealed, this is a huge bomb to get into. Not going to see probably any kind of standard play. However, paying 7 is probably not as bad if this is, definitely a mana producer as well. So if you have multiples in the battlefield with Land War Elves and things like that, it is the colors that you can actually ramp into. So this could be a card that could see more play than normal in draft or in Standard. But as far as Draft and Sealed goes, if you're in red and green, this card is a great way to get into it a little bit more. Next up here we have Enigma Drake, a card we haven't seen in a while since Amon Keplock, a 3-mana star 4 Drake with flying. Enigma Drake's power is equal to the number of instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard. This is a really, really good card for Draft and Sealed, especially if you're in the Is It strategy for sure. That is to say if you are getting into a lot of instant sorcery spells. If you're not, this is maybe a 1/4, this is a 2/4, that kind of thing. This will probably see more play, of course, just like in Standard, trying to make sure that there's like an Izzet deck somewhere that likes Enigma Drake in Standard. But more often than not, this will probably see the most play in Brawl, or maybe even Commander for that kind of format, since you just have more pieces to kind of deal with for Enigma Drake and how it kind of uses its cards. So I think for Draft and Sealed, Enigma Drake, whenever it was a nominated, was fine. Turning it into a 3/4 or 4/4 is amazing if you can get there, but sometimes you just can't in Draft and Sealed, and it really sucks when you have something like this in your deck. Moving up here, we have Heroic Reinforcements, a 4-mana sorcery. Create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. Until end of turn, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain haste. Why is this 4 mana? I mean, it's creating tokens, I get it, but like, it feels like it shouldn't be 4 mana. It feels like it should be like less than 4 mana, but it is creating tokens. It is giving a board wide pump and giving everything haste. So this is a great way to end a match for sure if you're ahead. So I really like this card for that particular reason. It is a sorcery speed spell, so it's not going to see probably any kind of like standard play or anything like that. If it's an instant spell, this would be amazing, but of course giving haste on instant speed on your opponent's turn doesn't really make sense. So this is a sorcery speed spell for probably that reason. I like the card a lot as far as being able to kind of end the game if you're ahead in Draft and Sealed. But besides that, it's kind of a card that's like, it just widens your board state with like kind of creatures that you just block with. And if you're not getting the if you're not using the +1/+1 in haste, then it's just 4 mana to make 2 1/1s, which I'm not a big fan of at all. Next up here we have Nikka Bolus the Ravager. This is a double-sided card here. A 4 mana 4/4 legendary creature, Elder Dragon, mythic with flying. When Nikka Bolus the Ravager enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card, and you can pay 7, exile Nikka Bolus the Ravager, then turn him to the battlefield transformed under his owner's control. Activate this ability only anytime you can cast a sorcery. So I'm going to talk about this side first before we flip it. This side is fine, I guess. I don't know if this will see much play because you have to pay 4 mana for it to hit the field and then another 7 to flip it. That's really expensive, guys. Even though it does make an opponent discard a card when it enters the battlefield, that's kind of like nothing compared to like how much mana you have to spend on this guy. Like a cumulative, 11 mana to get this person to get this dragon to flip here. And when it does flip, it turns into Nikka Bolus the Arisen, which is a planeswalker. 7 loyalty, which is a huge amount. +2, draw 2 cards, which is also very important. -3, Nikka Bolus the Arisen deals 10 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Again, just a huge amount of damage here. -4, put target creature or planeswalker card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Also very important. And -12, exile all but the bottom card of target player's library. Again, it's super cool and like super flavorful, but it takes 11 mana to get here. It better do something amazing for it to take 11 mana. So I'm not too excited about this card at all. I think it probably just has too much mana on top of it to see any kind of standard play. Commander play for sure, yes, and Brawl play for sure, yes. If you get into this in Draft and Sealed, I mean, it's fine again, but again, it just takes so much mana to get it to flip. And if it does flip, it does like wreck face. It does do a ton of good stuff, but it's just so much mana to flip. So much mana, guys, so much. So, maybe this will see play in like a weird like Grixis control deck in Standard, but I'm just not excited about this because as soon as it hits the battlefield, you're tapped out for 4, you get Vraska's Contempt or something like that, and you just feel really bad about it. So that's kind of what that's kind of what I'm expecting in the Standard format. But let's move on to the next card here, which is Peladia, I think that's how you pronounce it. More the Ruiner. It's a 7 mana 6/6 legendary creature, Elder Dragon, flying, vigilance, trample, and it has hexproof if it hasn't dealt damage yet. So interesting ability here. Weird like pre-combat ability. Not a huge fan of this guy or this girl, as this is the sister of Nikka Bolus. As far as like to see play in Standard, again, just another card that's like, it's interesting. It has lots of cool like key phrases and text and stuff like that, but it just doesn't really do enough for me to make me be like, I like this card a lot. It's just, not a huge fan of it. I wish it had hexproof all the time. That would make this card insane, but because it doesn't, it's just kind of It's just kind of That's my impression. It's probably gonna do 6 points of damage and then die to something, or even attack in and then just die to a Settle the Record or something like that in Standard. This is probably more of a Commander flavor win or a Brawl flavor win for me. Moving right along here, we have Poison Tip Archer, a 4 mana 2/3 elf archer with reach and death touch. Whenever another creature dies, each opponent loses 1 life. Super good card in Golgari if you're in Draft and Sealed. This is a card that's definitely a not necessarily a win more mechanic, a very good card to kind of push your opponent off of their winning mechanic mechanics. Getting rid of a flyer on their side of the field, this card basically needs an answer because it's going to trade with anything because it has Death Touch as well. And if something dies on their side of the field, with this on the battlefield, they lose an additional 1 point of life as well. So Poison Tip Archer has a ton of good stuff here. Really like this a lot. I do think that this card might see some standard play in a weird elf brew, but I don't really think so because it is 4 mana, a little expensive. But I will definitely try and brew around it and see if I can make it work. I do think it's just kind of too expensive for standard, but definitely we'll see some draft and sealed format stuff for sure. Next up, we have Psychic Symbiont. Or Symbiont? I don't know. Whatever. It's a 6 mana 3/3 Nightmare Horror flying. When it enters a battlefield, target opponent discards a card and you may draw a card. Interesting ability here. Very expensive for what it's trying to do. It's giving you card advantage and removing card advantage from your opponent, so that is very, very good with the black-blue control strategy in Draft and Sealed. So if you do get into this with black-blue control, then it's a very good card for that. It's also a 3/3 flyer as well, so it's definitely going to be able to get in some damage turn over turn in the air too. So my only point of contention is that it's 6 mana instead of 5 mana. I feel like 5 mana would be better here instead of 6. Very, very expensive on the curve. But again, if you're in that control list in Draft and Seal, this card is a huge house, but not going to see any kind of standard play at all. Next up here, we have Regal Bloodlord, a 5 mana 2/4 vampire soldier with flying. At the beginning of your insta, if you gain life this turn, create a 1/1 black bat creature token with flying. I really like this card a lot, especially in the white-black life gain, life loss deck, with like a Johnny, Pridemate, stuff like that, where you're gaining life, losing life, all that kind of stuff. Really like this because it gives you the ability to go really, really wide for just like having a 2/4 flyer, and a 2/4 flyer for 4 or for 5 is already kind of decent in Draft and Sealed and has a nice butt on it to be able to block a lot of good stuff. Really like this card a lot in that particular format. Probably won't see any kind of standard play because it is just a once to trigger a turn because it is on the end step. It isn't just whenever you gain life. I wish it was whenever you gain life. That'd be so much better. But it's at the beginning of the next end step, which is, could possibly be, your turn and your opponent's turn. So next up here we have Satyr Enchanter, a 3 mana 2/2 Satyr Druid. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. This is a card that I feel like might see some combo play in standard. There's a lot of good enchantments out there. I really want to use this for something, and I'm not sure what to use it for just yet, but it has the ability to draw a bunch of stuff for you, as well as, just be a 2/2 body as well. So in Draft and Sealed, probably not going to favor this a lot unless you get into a lot of auras, or a lot of good enchantments, but in Standard, in Brawl, and in Commander, this is a card you probably want to board in for sure when you have a lot of enchantments and you want to draw a lot of cards really, really quickly. Next up here for us, we have Skyrider Patrol, a 4 mana 2/3 flyer. At the beginning of your combat on your turn, you may pay a green and a blue. When you do, put a +1/+1 counter on another target creature you control, and that creature gains flying until end of turn. I really like this because the counters stay on the creature, obviously, and it's only 2 mana to do this. It's also a 4 mana 2/3 flyer in green and blue, which is super good as well. So I'm really liking this card overall. Again, it's a card that's it's almost there to be able to be playable in a brewable deck in Standard, but for Draft and Sealed, it's a great bomb if you're in the Simic colors. Next up here we have, not even going to try to pronounce that, the Dire. This is a 7 mana 6/6 legendary creature, Elder Dragon. This is a flyer. Whenever it attacks, not enters battle, whenever it attacks, for each player, choose target permanent that player controls. Those players sacrifice those permanents. Each player who sacrificed a permanent this way reveals the top card of their library, then puts it onto the battlefield if it's a permanent card. Interesting card, super flavorful for Brawl and Commander. So expensive, not going to see probably any kind of standard play. I mean, there's probably some brewable deck out there for Standard that this will be put into. And yeah, never going to see any kind of Commander play, or Draft and Sealed play, because it's a mythic and you're not going to see it that often. Moving up here, we have Amulet of the Safekeeping. We're moving on to our artifacts here. Amulet of the Safekeeping is a 2 mana artifact. Whenever you become a target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, counter that spell or ability unless its controller pays 1 colorless. Creature tokens get -1, or -1, -0, yeah. Super interesting. Really like this for a sideboard card in maybe Standard. There was some people talking about this might be a card for Modern or something like that. I'm not really so sure about that. It does make sure that all the tokens on the go wide strategies in Standard though are basically just hosed completely. They all turn into just blockers. So this is a really good card for that particular situation. I do think this card is just super good for being good sideboard tech for the mono red aggro list whenever they go up against like the life linking or go wide strategies of white right now in standard. As far as this card being good in draft and sealed, it's really not going to be that good in draft and sealed. It is a rare as well, so it's going to be a card you might feel bad about if you get into it as a pack, in your pack. But yeah, I'm not really sure of the implementation of this card just yet. It kind of just does stuff, which is fine, but it's not like doing enough stuff for me. I hope that makes sense. Moving up here, we have Arcane Encyclopedia. This is a 3-mana artifact. You can pay 3, tap it, and draw a card. I feel like this card is super good for draft and sealed. A lot of flexibility for you for sure, giving you the ability, if you're in the more control-heavy strategies in draft and sealed, to draw cards on their in-step and then draw a card on our upkeep or after our draw step if we have the mana to do that, as well as do other stuff on our turn. Just a really good card to be able to do it turn over turn throughout the entire match, so very good for that particular situation. Won't see any kind of standard play because it is a little slow as far as 3 mana, then another 3 mana just to tap it to draw a card. But in the draft and sealed environment, it's a little bit of a slower format, you know, so this is a card that will see a ton of play in that environment. Moving on here, we have Chaos Wand, a rare 3-mana artifact. You can pay for, tap it, target opponent exiles the cards, or exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile an instant or sorcery card. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost, then put the exiled card that weren't cast this way on the bottom of that library in a random order. This card sort of has like Commander and Brawl written all over it, but it's also really interesting for a standard deck as well, being able to basically take control of your opponent's deck and, you know, like taking whatever they have off the top and sorting away any kind of creatures or artifacts or whatever that you don't want on their top that they may have put there throughout the match. So Chaos Wand kind of helps kind of shuffle up your opponent's deck. As far as this card being useful in draft and sealed, it can be, but it's very, very interesting in that particular environment. I feel like this is probably more of a card meant for more Commander and Brawl kind of situations. Moving up here, we have Crucible of Worlds, one of the best reprints in Core Set 2019. A 3-mana artifact. You may play lands cards from your graveyard, so super good for us. Very, very interesting as well, and kept the art. Very, very nice too. In draft and sealed, this is a mythic that you might feel bad about because there's really not that many like land like interaction stuff in the format, so it's a card you probably just won't want to pass unless you want to, you know, get it for the money stuff for modern and Commander, things like that. As far as standard goes, we already have a like Crucible of Worlds on a stick on a creature right now. However, Crucible of Worlds is better strictly because it is a thing that has like more difficult to deal with, like can't be removed as easily as just a creature. So that is a good thing about Crucible of Worlds. So it might see some play in standard. As far as modern and Commander, of course, this is like a staple in those formats. So kind of see a lot of play there, of course, and a really nice welcome reprint in the set. Next up here, we have Disickrated Tomb, a 3-mana artifact. Whenever one or more creature cards leave your graveyard, create a 1/1 bat, a black bat creature token with flying. Super interesting card for standard. Not really sure if there's like a combo deck around this. As far as this being a card for draft and sealed, there are a few like really good cards to bring cards back from the graveyard, like in black, but I'm not excited about this necessarily in that format. I don't think it's going to do as much as people think it might do. So it might be another card you might just pass in draft and sealed. As far as this being a card for like Commander and Brawl, definitely this is a card built for those kind of formats, more flavorful, a little bit slower formats. But yeah, not really seeing much in this card besides just kind of casual flavor win here. But maybe some stuff for standard just in case. Moving on here, we have Diamond Mare. I love this card. A 2-mana 1/3 horse. As Diamond Mare enters the battlefield, choose a color. Whenever you cast a spell of the chosen color, you gain 1 life. This card is super good for the Crested Sunmare deck right now. Cannot wait to use this. This card is also good in the life gain deck in just draft and sealed. And it's also just an artifact, so it goes into everything and helps every single color you make it choose. So if you're a red deck, you name red, you're gaining a life when you cast red spells. It's very, very strange, but it totally works with Diamond Mare here. Love this card a lot. Gonna see a ton of play in draft and sealed. Gonna probably see a lot of play in standard too. Just getting some active passive life gain just by, you know, being able to play a 2-mana 1/3, so very good as well. So I like this card a ton. I think I might see some Commander and Brawl play too. It's just a really good all-around card, but definitely going to see some draft and sealed play for sure in that white-black life gain deck. Next up here we have Dragon's Hoard, a 3-mana artifact rare. Whenever a dragon enters a battlefield under your control, put a gold counter on Dragon's Hoard. You can tap it, remove a gold counter from Dragon's Hoard, draw a card, or you can tap this to add any mana of any color. It's a manalith with like a dragon upside, which is interesting. So I like this card a ton for that. I think in like a standard dragon list, this card might actually see some play. As far as just seeing play in draft and sealed, it's a little too specific, a little too kind of like you have to play dragons, you have to be in red. But, you know, if you're not in those colors, or if you're not in red, this is still just kind of a manalith, which is fine as well. So not too, like, upset with this card in Draft and Sealed, but it is kind of just a manalith at the rare slot if you don't have dragons in your deck in Draft and Sealed. So it is a card you might just like want to pass whenever you're trying to build your deck. So I think this card will see play in like a Commander Brawl or standard Dragons list. I do think this card will probably see play in a standard Dragons list for sure, or even, you know, some brewing around for sure. But love this card for that particular list. Besides that, it's just a 3-mana manalith, and that's, I mean, it's not bad. It's not great. Moving up here, we have Explosive Apparatus, a 1-mana artifact. You can pay 3, tap it, sacrifice it. It deals 2 damage to any target. Very good, very straightforward. Love this card, and we'll see a ton of Draft and Sealed play as a good removal spell. Won't see any kind of standard play or anything outside of that. Just a really good card for Draft and Sealed for that environment. Next up, we have Field Creeper, a 2-mana 2/1. Well, they gotta have one more artifact for something, I guess. And this card exists, so I mean, this is probably one of the few cards where I'm gonna be like, you know what, it's just kind of bad. You probably shouldn't put this into anything. If you're really desperate on a creature and you really need one for Draft and Sealed, then kind of put this into your deck. But if not, I would just pass this on by. Moving up here, we have Fountain of Renewal, a 1-mana artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, you gain 1 life. Another good card for the life gain deck. You can pay 3, sacrifice it, and draw a card. I really like this card a lot in Draft and Sealed. Has a lot of good stuff going on for it, getting you passive life gain as well as getting you a card if you really, really need it. But in the white life gain deck for like a Ajani Pridemate, stuff like that, in Draft and Sealed, this card is amazing. In Standard, it's probably going to be amazing as well for like a Crested Sunmare deck or a Ajani Pridemate deck. I cannot wait to brew that deck. It's going to be a ton of fun for sure. But yeah, love Fountain of Renewal here. I love that it's only 1 mana. Very, very useful in those formats. Next up here, we have Gargoyle Sentinel. This is a nice staple here. 3 mana, 3/3 artifact creature Gargoyle with Defender. You can pay 3 until end of turn. Gargoyle Sentinel loses Defender and gains Flying. This is fine. This is a good like 13th or 14th pick for you in Draft and Sealed as a creature, because it's a good 3/3 blocker, but it's also a 3/3 flyer once you have the mana to pay for it again to attack out. So I like this card a lot for that. Not truly excited for it. If it sees any kind of standard play, it probably won't. It'll just be in a Draft and Sealed environment, and that's just fine by me. Next up, we have Gearsmith Guardian, a 5-mana 3/5. It gets +2/+0 as long as you control a blue creature. So this is a card you want to put into a blue deck in Draft and Sealed, making it a 5/5 for 5, which is amazing for just, you know, being a 5-mana artifact. So it can be put into anything, which is nice. But the only thing is, it's just a 5/5 vanilla at the end of the day without that ability, or with that ability, and sometimes that's just not what you want to have in Draft and Sealed. But, you know, being a 5-mana 3/5 isn't like a slouch or anything like that. It's just, you know, it gets the upper hand when it's in blue, but at the same time, it just kind of does nothing as well for your board state, besides just being a good attacker. And sometimes you just don't really want that when you're in blue. So not too hot on this card especially. I think it's fine. I don't think it's just great though. And definitely won't see any kind of play in Standard. Moving up here, we have Magistrates Scepter, a 3-mana artifact. You can pay for, put a charge counter on Magistrates Scepter. You can tap it, remove 3 charge counters from Magistrates Scepter, take an extra turn after this one. So I'm sure this will see a ton of play somewhere for sure. Maybe in a Winding Constrictor deck in Standard or something like that. But for Draft and Sealed, this card is kind of silly, kind of fun, and definitely flavorful. So it's a card that you may not want to get into if you're in Draft and Sealed. But it can make you take an extra turn, so that's really, really interesting, and can be basically just winning you the game if you're in like a more control environment or a more control deck archetype. But for Commander and Brawl, this is a really fun flavor card for that too. So I don't think this will see much standard play besides like a weird combo Winding Constrictor style deck for this. Moving up here, we have Manalith. There it is. Pay 3 mana. It's an artifact. You can add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Very nice. I keep saying mana pool, but mana pool is not on the card anymore. It's a little annoying. I'm aging myself now. This card is fine. It's very, very useful if you're getting into like dragons or large creatures in Draft and Sealed. And not really seeing any kind of standard play right now, but it is a good card for Commander and Brawl too. Next up, we have Marauders Axe, a 2-mana artifact equipment. Equip creature gets +2/+0. You can equip for 2. This card is just fine. It's no short sword in that it isn't a +1/+1, but that's perfectly fine. It can still trade really nicely with creatures, or make this trade really nicely with upper end creatures on your opponent's side of the field as well, or do some extra damage to your opponent's face, and that's just peachy. Love the art as well, and yeah, just a Draft and Sealed card for you for sure. Next up, we have Meteor Golem. This is a 7-mana 3/3 artifact creature Golem. When Meteor Golem enters the battlefield, destroy target non-land permanent and opponent controls. This is like one of the best artifact, just straight up removal spells I've ever seen, I feel like. Universal Solvent was in Kaladesh, and this is a card that's similar to that, except it's an enter the battlefield ability, which can be triggered multiple times, you know, with Panharmonicon, just letting you know. I'm sure Saffron's like, yes, yes. But yeah, it's one of those cards that's very interesting for draft and sealed environment, can definitely do some real damage. It is a 3/3 body as well, so that's no slouch either. So it's basically a removal spell and a 3/3 body for 7 mana, and that's not bad when it's 7 of any color mana. Not going to see any kind of like standard play because it's so expensive, but for draft and sealed, this card isn't like terrible at all. Moving on here, we have Millstone. Ah, yes, the mill cards. Here they are. A 2-mana artifact, pay 2 and tap it. Target player puts the top 2 cards of the library into their graveyard. I'm not honestly sure that this card is going to be useful in Standard. In fact, I feel like it's not going to be useful in Standard, which is kind of sad. But in Draft and Seal, this is a very, very good card to like slowly mill your opponent away. There are so many like mill cards in Core Set 2019 that if you get into them, you can just build a mill deck, which is kind of amazing, honestly. Really excited for that. But yeah, probably just gonna be relegated to Draft and Seal, you know, in Commander, Brawl, stuff like that. But yeah, I really want this to be like useful in Standard, but I feel like it's just a little too slow, which is kind of sad. Next up, we have Rose Gloves, a 2-mana artifact equipment. Whenever an equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. You can equip this for 2. This is an interesting card. I wish it would be like, you know, it's unblockable and also you draw a card. That would be great. But you know, you have to hit your opponent, you know, directly for this card to be useful, which makes this card not that great, honestly. So this is usually a low pick for me in Draft and Sealed. I'm not going to see any kind of standard play. Moving up here, we have Sigiled Sword of Valera. I think that's how you pronounce it. 3-mana artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has vigilance and is a knight in addition to its other types. Whenever equipped creature attacks, create a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance that's attacking. You can also equip this for 3 mana. This card is super good for white-black knights and mono-white knights. Definitely going to use this in a new like brew for a knight deck in Standard and Commander and Brawl. This card is super fun in that, and if you get into a lot of knights, or not get into a lot of knights, if you just get into this as your rare and Draft and Sealed, it can definitely run the table with your opponent, because you can, you know, move this from like the dead creature to a token and then kind of go from there, which is amazing as well. So this is like a token producer, but also just being a really good card that gives your creature vigilance too. So really like this card a lot. Moving on up, we have Skyscanner, a 3-mana 1/1 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, we draw a card. Not bad at the common slot. A fine card for us for Draft and Seal. Not going to see any kind of standard play, but a good card to draw some cards in the like mid to late game, because it is 3 mana, and a good way to get in some over-the-head damage with flying. So I'm not hating this card. I wish it was probably 2 mana instead of 3, but drawing card advantage is, you know, just a little bit more expensive than normal sometimes. Moving up here, we have Suspicious Bookcase, a 2-mana 0/4 defender. You can pay 3, tap it, target creature can't be blocked this turn. Very interesting card. I kind of like this as a nice 15th or 16th slot in a draft deck. Not going to see any kind of standard play, of course, but it's a very good defender, being able to block a lot of stuff with 4 toughness. But also in the mid to late game, if you have a nice attacker that can almost kill your opponent, paying 3 mana and making it unblockable for the turn is super good for this card being early game blocking. So I like this card a lot in the early game, mid game, even the late game to close out a match. Next up here, we have Transmogrifying Wand. I think that's how you pronounce it. 3-mana artifact. Transmogrifying Wand enters the battlefield with 3 charge counters on it. You can pay 1 and tap it, remove a charge counter from the wand, destroy target creature. Its controller creates a 2/4 white ox creature token. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. This is 3 removal spells on a single like artifact in Draft and Seal, so that makes this card really sought after as a rare. For Standard, it's a little awkward, a little funny, which makes it probably a Brawl and Commander all-star, so I really like that ability there for that. But yeah, after it hits, after the counters are removed from it, so you only get, you know, 3 kills here with this. After you move a counter from it, it's basically just a dead card in the battlefield, which is a little sad. But besides that, it's very, very fun in Draft and Sealed if you get into this as a rare. Next up here, we have lands here. We've got the usual suspects of Cinder Barons coming in the battlefield, tapping for black and red. Detention Tower, which is a rare here. You can tap it to add colorless. Pay 1, tap it until end of turn. Your opponents and creatures your opponents control with hexproof can be the target of spells and abilities you control as though they didn't have hexproof. I feel like this is a card that's like boggles hate for Modern here. Really fun for that. But also just a good card to get around like a Carnage Tyrant or something like that in Standard as well. Not going to see too much specific play in, like, I feel like Draft and Sealed, because it is a rare. You're not going to see that much either way. But in Standard and Modern, Commander, that kind of stuff, it's going to be a powerhouse to get rid of annoying pests like boggles and things like that, so that's good for that. Next up we have Forsaken Sanctuary, a white and black tapper. Foul Orchard, it's a black and green tapper. Highland Lake, blue and red. Then Meandering River, a white and blue. Reliquary Tower, which we haven't seen in a while, but you have no maximum hand size with this card. You can tap for colorless. Really like this card. Might make Kefnet like an actual like thing now. I feel like Reliquary Tower should have been in Dominaria or Ixalan or even Amonkhet when Kefnet was revealed, but a very good card for that particular situation. Like this card a lot for that. Then we have Rupture Spire, which is interesting. It comes in tapped. When it enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless you pay 1 colorless, and then you can tap to add any mana of any color to your mana pool. So really like this card a ton. This might honestly see some standard play. I'm going to see Commander and Brawl play, of course, and a very good land fixer for Draft and Sealed too. Stone Quarry tapping for red and white, Submerged Boner tapping for blue and black, and Timber Gorge tapping for red and green. Tranquil Expanse tapping for green and white, Woodland Stream tapping for green and blue, and that is going to end it for the deck the core set review. That's all of the cards besides like basic lands. We're not going to go over basic lands. You know what those do. But that's it. That's all the cards for the set. Really do enjoy Core Set 2019 so far. Really happy with a lot of the cards that are in the format. I am definitely going to be releasing a draft kind of video talking about the top 5 commons and uncommons in every single color, like kind of going through why it's good, why they're better than other cards in that set. But yeah, I hope these videos were definitely useful to you guys. I hope you guys have a great pre-release and have a great open house if you go to that this weekend. But just have a great time overall with Core Set 2019. I'm really happy to have Core Sets back. I really hope they kind of stay as a mainstay for like the summer set. Really do desperately need them to kind of put in those Lightning Strike, Shocks, Duress, Counterspell, those kind of basic spells that you don't want kind of taking up design space in other sets. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. I appreciate you all. Like the video if you like it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.